modulate if you want to. Just you can stay put. That's fine either way. Stand with me, would you please? Her microphone was off. She has a beautiful voice, and I'd like to lead her, for her to lead us, and then we all sing together.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've known as days to see God's face. Then when we first begun.
Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you so much. Well, thank the Lord. We've had a bit of a worship service here, and it's a delight. It's very fitting to celebrate Roscoe in this way. Betty, we love you, and we're so grateful for you and for yours and Roscoe's service to the church for many years. Many of you may not know who I am. My name is Matt Thomas, and I'm one of the bishops in the Free Methodist Church, but also been a superintendent. And I see another former superintendent here with us. Ray Bates is here, and of this conference. And we have served, but Roscoe had big shoes for us to fill. Marvelous man, just as Stan had drawn attention to. Almost perfect in every way. Not completely, but almost. And he was redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. We're grateful for that. I'm sure there was some need for redemption there. Probably more for Betty than Roscoe, but no, I'm just teasing. Both of them very playful through the years, and we've had many great interactions with them. And I'm actually, when we concluded our time in seminary, we had some wonderful years as associate pastor, and I was trying to find a place to go to become a senior pastor. And in my quest, looking around different places where we might be able to go, it didn't take long to figure out that we would come to the Columbia River Conference. And the primary, if not exclusive reason, was the fact that of all the superintendents that had been talking to me right prior to my graduation for several years, I'd been receiving cards of congratulations, birthday greetings, acknowledgments, and Roscoe just quietly, Roscoe and Betty both, quietly continued to stay in touch with us. And so when the opportunity came to serve in this conference, it was, you stay with family. And they had become like family. It was great. But all of my memories are very, very fond of both Roscoe and Betty. Even in the early years when I was in seminary, they used to traverse over to Western Evangelical Seminary in the Portland area where Marlene and I went to school. We were just starting our family. Our family was young at the time. In fact, I think this episode happened when we had one of our 4 children. And I remember they used to host a dinner every time that we would gather together with all the Free Methodist students, and several of the area superintendents would show up. And our bishop was there, and Bishop David Foster, I remember, came to the event, and he was the speaker. And after all, he's the bishop, and you obviously you want to offer. At my age at that time, I thought, boy, you know, this is the bishop. I have to be on my best behavior, whatever. People don't do that with me now, but back in those days, they used to do that. And so we all came in and we signed in. We put our name on a little sticky and put it on our chest and went about our day. Well, Betty just decided to play a little joke on David. I don't know if you remember that, but she took off her name badge and she went up to the bishop and put her hand on his back, of course, sticking the sticker on there, and said, "Well, it's so good to see you, Bishop." And it wasn't until we were in a public restaurant and there was an adjacent bar, and some fellow that was inebriated kind of came walking in and saw Roscoe in the bathroom in there and said, "Well, hello, Betty, I think you found the wrong restroom." So, you probably don't remember that, don't want me to tell that. But Roscoe would just politely kind of respond, to the circumstance and make up for that. But through the years, we've obviously had a marvelous relationship with them. I could elaborate, but I'll allow many of you later to tell those stories. It's great to get together and be part of a family that celebrates life, but we celebrate life because of the life we have in Jesus Christ. I tell people often one of the grandest celebrations I'm engaged in anywhere is the graduation ceremony of somebody who finally, after years of serving the Lord, just to stand in His very presence. One of the most heart-wrenching experiences that any pastor has is to fear that someone has not entered into a life-giving relationship with Jesus Christ and spend an eternity of regret and death. We don't know what all, we like to talk about the one, we don't like to talk about the other. But this happens to be on the side of the things we like to talk about. Because we can legitimately ask the question, when we know someone like Roscoe, who's lived the life that he's lived and brought many people into the presence of Christ, and also blessed those leaders who've done the same over and over again, and lived by example, that what we really talk about in the church frequently, and that is living a Jesus-soaked, Spirit-filled life. A life of holiness in the Holy Spirit, and definitely Roscoe had demonstrated that. There is a tear with us. With any believer, at least there should be. And that is the rending experience that we have when we become so close to the Lord, as the Apostle Paul himself said in Philippians chapter 1, starting in verse 20, where he said, "I eagerly expect and hope that I will live my life," and he goes on and talks about courageously and how he would live his life. He says, and he said, "For me to live is Christ." Well, let me quote it right here. He says, "I eagerly expect that I will in no way be ashamed." And then he says, "For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Whether I am to go on living in the body, this will make fruitful labor for you, but I'm torn between the two. I do not know which to choose. It is better by far," and those are his words, and I think for anybody who has had a deep experience with Christ, "it's better by far that I depart to be with Christ. But it's more necessary for you," he concluded from his Roman chains to the Philippian church, "it's better for you that I remain. And so convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with you for your joy and progress in the faith." Those are his words about his experience. And I think anyone who has really come into a marvelous relationship with Jesus Christ, the life-transforming, the life-giving life that we can have when we have our everything about us, our sin forgiven and our lives restored, we obviously want to long to be home. There is that yearning. I remember when I was a young pastor in this conference in Fruitland, Idaho, and some of the older ones of you might remember the Hoffmans. Harold Hoffman was a pastor here for a long time. Irene, his wife, he had been gone for quite some time, and I became her pastor, and she was in her 80s, I believe, at the time that I became her pastor, and I was in my mid-20s, so there was a big spread there, but she was a prayer warrior, always supported me in prayer, and supported the church, and loved people, just loved people, no matter what the circumstances were. And I remember when she was coming toward her last days, and I remember her children and her grandchildren all came on one weekend, because It seemed like she was reviving, and then she was failing, and she was reviving and then failing, and the doctors didn't know if this would go on for days or weeks or months or possibly even a year.